It's rather customary in our community that after a friar is through their initial formation, they are given a chance to go to Assisi, to go to the place where St. Francis lived and died, and to experience a Franciscan charism in a fresh new way. Well, that happened to me and Father Tom and our friend Father Paul and Father Joe, and we were sent for a month one summer. We were much younger then, and we experienced all that Assisi had to offer. And the early friars built a hermitage a little outside of Assisi on a hillside. We call it the Carcery. And it's a stone building. It's rather unsightly, but it's just stones. But it's a place of hermitage, so it's not supposed to be beautiful. But it has many small rooms and walkways through it. And again, in the 13th century, people didn't have such nourishment as we did. So one of the doorways going from one room to another, you really had to duck and get through and move through. Well, Father Paul was rather full-figured. And he got down on his knees and started getting through the door, and he got stuck. And we started laughing. He still couldn't unstick himself. And there were some of us on one side, some on us on another, and he simply gave up and said, "Tell my mother I love her." But we finally got him out. But we realized that we had to be very careful in our next choices of rooms. The term then, what we saw then, was a small doorway, a small door frame. And narrow can often be a somewhat negative feeling when we hear that phrase. Few of us, for example, would like to be thought of as narrow-minded. We associate narrow-mindedness with perhaps bigotry or a lack of imagination, whereas we think of someone who's broad-minded is considered tolerant and open and acceptable. In our gospel, however, Jesus is happy to use the word narrow in response to a question to him by someone in the crowd. "Sir, will there only be a few saved?" Jesus chose particularly not to answer that particular question directly. That would have started an unhelpful discussion about how many will be saved. He challenged those traveling with him to strive to enter by the narrow door. The invitation to strive suggests struggle and exertion, as Paul had to do to get through that small passageway in the Carcery. To get through a narrow door, you need to be focused and attentive. You need a clear vision, a purpose of what you're going to do, and a certain commitment to get there. Jesus declared that those who wish to be his followers need to have qualities of commitment, clarity of vision, focus, and above all, determination. Becoming one of Jesus' disciples is never a laid-back affair. It requires a conscious and deliberate effort on our part. We have to work at it. Much of the culture in which we live today pulls us in many different directions, other than the gospel would like us to take. The world in which we live is not always supportive of the values of the gospel. There can be a lot of pressure on people, some of it very subtle, to act in ways that are contrary to the expressions of Jesus and the ways of love. We need to be very conscious and deliberate then about the living of our faith in our world. At some point in our lives, we need to take hold of our baptismal identity for ourselves. We need to make our own decision rather than the one our parents made for us. And it's great that you all made a conscious and deliberate effort to get to church today. That's part of going through the narrow door. Congratulations. You're working at it. You're good at it. The efforts we have to make to get through that narrow door are not anxious or despairing efforts. There are efforts of those who know that the Lord's efforts on our behalf are always greater than what we do for ourselves. He's always working and striving for us, urging us onward. If we keep striving in the conviction that, in the words of the psalm, strong is the Lord's love for us, he is faithful forever, It's true that we cannot be presumptuous, however. Yet those in the gospel who said, we once drank with you and ate in your company, you taught in our streets. Yet we must be confident that if we rely on the Lord's help, and we should, while making every effort we can on our part, the Lord will see us through the narrow door and lead us to that great banquet of eternal life. Jesus, I trust in you, and I trust you'll help me along the way.